to welcome you all with us this morning. I'm Liz Goulton, I'm Director of Public Health and Wellbeing at Coventry City Council, and just a few words and a welcome from me before we get into the main event. And thank you very much to all our speakers who are with us this morning, and indeed to all our delegates. We've got some great speakers. We've got people who you'll be very familiar with, and also people who may be new to you. We've got both Sir Michael Marmot and Sir Chris Ham with us, who I'm really delighted they've both found time to be with us this morning, and I think they'll give some really different perspectives which are hopefully will be welcomed. So as Director of Public Health for the city, then I really just wanted to say a big thank you to all our business community for the input you have had through the pandemic. I really recognise how difficult and challenging it has been, but the work you've done in terms of keeping workforces safe, but in terms of keeping the economy moving as much as we possibly can, has all been really, really welcome. And we've worked, I think, really hand in hand across public health and the business community over the last 18 months. But as we start to move out of the acute phase of the pandemic, then I think the inequalities that we've seen in people's life chances and health outcomes are really, really pertinent now. And that's one of the things I'd really like to think about with you all this morning. So just a few practicalities for me before we start. So it is a webinar, so you are on mute throughout, but you can use the chat function. You can ask questions, you can make comments, and the session is being recorded as well. So I hope that's okay with everybody. The session is split into two halves. So up until 11, we have some really good speakers and some case studies. There may be a little bit of time for me to collate some of the questions from the chat and feed those back to people who presented, and then there's a short break, and then after that we have a more interactive practical session with Jenny and Joe and Emma, and some really good interesting detail that hopefully you can get into. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Chris Ham. Chris is an internationally renowned expert on health policy and management, but we're really lucky to have him working with us locally as he's chair of the Coventry and Warwickshire Health and Care Partnership. So over to you, Chris.
Well, thanks very much, Liz, for the welcome. And can I just endorse what you said, and grateful that colleagues have found the time to join us today. So our focus is on how we can all work together to improve the health and well-being of the million or so people who live across Coventry and Warwickshire. And as you say, I chair what we used to call the Health and Care Partnership, but recently we've become the Integrated Care System for Coventry and Warwickshire, a partnership of NHS organisations, the councils, voluntary sector and private sector partners as well. And as we collectively seek to improve health and well-being, we're trying to do two things. The first is to prevent illness and enable people to live longer and healthier lives. But secondly, and critically for today, in so doing, to reduce the persistent inequalities in health that exist not just in our community, but across the whole of the UK. We know the NHS has a part to play in improving health, and some of us may have been viewing with fascination the BBC series Hospital in the last few weeks, which is a fly on the wall documentary, if you haven't seen it, in Coventry at UHCW, showcasing the inspiring work that our colleagues there have undertaken for people with acute medical conditions. But I'd also want to recognise the other parts of the NHS and the way they contribute to improving health. General practitioners do much of that work, including a key central role in the successful vaccination programme, the work of our community nurses and health visitors, the role of our staff in the Partnership Trust dealing with rising concerns about mental health in our community, and I could go on. The point I want to make is, although the NHS does have that vital role, actually prevention is everybody's business. And when I started my career back in the mid-1970s, in fact, the government of the day published a document called Prevention and Health, Everybody's Business. This was when a rising young medical politician, Dr. David Owen, was the junior minister in the Department of Health at the time, and he was working with Barbara Castle, and they set out their plans for improving population health in that document. And this phrase, everybody's business has stayed with me since then. Health and wealth are two sides of the same coin. Healthy people help businesses to thrive, and a vibrant economy creates jobs and opportunities to help people to thrive. But it's not just businesses, important as they are. It's our public sector organisations, our councils and our NHS partners. It's the voluntary and community sector, and we're blessed in Coventry and Warwickshire to have a vibrant community and voluntary sector with lots of fantastic contributions that we see from them. And of course, it's the networks of people and communities where we live and work, who also contribute to us living these long and healthy lives. All of these are the wider determinants of health and well-being, identified by Douglas Black in his report back in 1980, commissioned by the government of the day. And that work continued since then, most notably, of course, by Sir Michael Marmot and his team at UCL, doing so much to highlight the continuing challenge we face as a society in improving health and reducing inequalities. And we're looking forward to hearing from Michael in a moment. But let me just say, before I hand over, we have, I believe, some very strong foundations here in Coventry and Warwickshire. The integrated care system that I have the privilege of chairing brings together many of the partners to work on these issues. Our ambition, our strapline, is we want to enable people to start well, live well, and age well. And we work hand in hand with the Place Forum across Coventry and Warwickshire. If you don't know, this is the forum that brings together our two health and wellbeing boards in the city of Coventry and the county of Warwickshire. And they provide impressive leadership on what we're doing around improving health and wellbeing, with their leadership and their partnership with us. And of course, Coventry itself is a Marmot city, and we are proud of that, and we're delighted to have Sir Michael's continuing association with this work and the leadership, Liz, that you and colleagues in the council have provided. So all of these things bring us together today. I'm delighted to have been invited to say a few words and then to listen in to the conversation that will follow on, because we need to redouble our efforts. We've known about these inequalities at least since 1980 in Douglas Black's seminal report, but of course the pandemic has shone a harsh light on inequalities in our society and in the health outcomes. And Michael, I'm sure, will speak a little more about this. So the evidence is clear. The evidence is also clear what needs to be done. There's no lack of understanding of the interventions that will help us. What we now need is the collective will to act on the evidence and to bring together all of our assets, all of our resources in the public sector, the private sector, and the third sector to make tangible progress as we get into the recovery phase. So I'd like now to hand over to Sir Michael Marmot. He's Professor of Epidemiology and Public Health at UCL, Director of the UCL Institute of Health Equity. And Michael works around the world on these issues. He's very much in demand through WHO, international organizations, and a whole variety of countries that are concerned with health inequality. So Michael, it's good to see you again. You've been incredibly busy, I know, during the pandemic, and we very much look forward to your contribution this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And it's, as I said to colleagues a few moments ago, for me, it's always a great pleasure to be back in Coventry, whether physically or virtually. Coventry is so important to me because it is, of course, a Marmot city and shows what can be done. I was sitting at my desk the other day and I had my iPad next to me, and I get news flashes on my iPad, and it said, Jeff Bezos will shoot himself. And my first reaction was, well, better he do it than anybody else do it. And then I had another glance at my iPad and it said, Jeff Bezos will shoot himself into space. That was only slightly less disquieting than what I thought the message originally said. And it got me thinking again about Amazon. In my book, The Health Gap, Chapter 6 on work, and we're talking about work this morning, Chapter 6 on work begins, I didn't actually identify the person as an Amazon employee because I worried that Amazon might not sell my book, which would be a problem. But I talk about an employee in a warehouse for an online business, and he's a picker. So you order goods online. Let's call him Alan. Alan has an electronic gizmo. It tells him to go to row H, shelf 13, pick up item 273/C and put it in his trolley. And then his gizmo tells him to go to another shelf and another row, another shelf, put another gizmo. And he's a picker. He picks things off the shelf, puts them in his trolley, and the electronic conscience in his hand recognizes when his trolley's probably got enough kilos in it to strain his back. He then takes it to the packers. The packer packs it into a box, sticks on a label, and off it goes. So you click, he picks, she packs and sticks, and you've got your item. It's fantastic. And what got me thinking about Chapter 6 of my book was not just the news that Jeff Bezos was going to shoot himself into space, but I think it was on Monday, the New York Times had a link to, I think, ProPublica, a website. They got hold of tax returns for Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, and a few others. And between 2014 and 2018, you ready for this? Between 2014 and 2018, Jeff Bezos's wealth increased by $99 billion. I think that's 5 years, $99 billion, $20 billion a year. What they called the effective tax rate. In 3 years, he paid no taxes at all because he claimed he didn't earn anything. He paid no taxes, earned nothing, while his wealth was increasing at $20 billion a year. He's going to fly himself into, some of us think maybe when opening up happens, we'll go into town or to the beach or something. Jeff Bezos is going to go into space. So they calculated his effective tax rate. So if you take wealth plus income, given that he took very little income and mostly just increased his wealth, his effective tax rate was 0.98%, less than 1%. The average household in the US, what with deductions and one thing and another, pays about 13%. So Jeff Bezos employs people in this warehouse. I talked to Alan, the picker. We've studied the psychosocial work environment, and he has high demand, low control. So real demand, real pressure, because the electronic conscience in a way says, go faster, go faster. He's expected to meet certain time deadlines. So he's got real demand on him, but zero control. He can't say, I'll go to shelf B before shelf P. The gizmo says, go to shelf P first. Zero control. Effort reward imbalance, high effort, very little reward, not well paid, no status, no advancement, high perceived organizational injustice, shift work, job insecurity, and heavy lifting. These are all characteristics of the workplace that we and others have shown increased risk of physical illness and mental illness. And you think, where are we heading? I reviewed recently for The Lancet Michael Sandel's book, The Tyranny of Merit. I quoted Marx's dictum that history repeats itself first as tragedy and then as farce. And I said, in this case, it began as farce and returned as tragedy. Michael Young's 1958 book, The Rise of the Meritocracy, was a satire, but it's become real. It's returned as policy. We reward merit. And on the surface, that sounds right, doesn't it? Rewarding merit. Rewarding merit surely has virtue compared with rewarding inheritance, aristocratic privilege. It sounds right. But the upside of rewarding merit is, yep, people with merit rise to the top and get great rewards. The downside is, what about those who don't rise to the top? What about people who work in the factories? What about care workers? What about all the people who kept our lives functioning during lockdown? If they subscribe to the meritocracy, that if you're good, you end up rising to the top. If they subscribe to that, it means they're internalizing the idea that they're no good. After all, if they were good, they'd rise to the top and they'd shoot themselves into space. Instead, they're left with the prospect of shooting themselves because they're of no value. That's what the meritocracy is telling them. The meritorious get rewarded and everyone else is not meritorious and doesn't get rewarded. There's a backlash against Michael Sandel's critique and others saying, no, we've got to reward merit. I work in an elite university and we want elite researchers, scientists, breaking down barriers, understanding new relationships. We, I think, would like our surgeons to be well-trained and the ones that have real skills to rise to the top. We don't want a society without people with skills and abilities and merit. Far from it. I don't think the critique of the meritocracy is saying we just want everyone to be the same. Far from it. We want capable people to contribute to our society. What we don't want is everybody else to be on the scrap heap. And I've been thinking about care workers as I think about Jeff Bezos and the meritocracy. Half of workers in adult social care do not earn a living wage. A large proportion are in the gig economy. In general, they have no job prospects. There's very little training, opportunities for advancement, as I say, particularly if they're in the gig economy. And we think back to all the workers who kept our lives going, the delivery drivers, the supermarket checkout people, the dustmen and the like. And that, yes, the people who work in factories and in the service sector. We have to say that we've got to think about the workplace as a place that fosters people's well-being, that gives people purpose in life. And to come back to these psychosocial work characteristics, that are characterized by a reasonable degree of control of the work, by appropriate reward for effort, by perceived justice in the workplace. These are all absolutely vital, because work is of major importance to health. Unemployment is bad for health. Work can be good for health, but it can be bad for health. And we think of work as affecting health in potentially three ways. First, it produces things, and the things that get produced can be good for health or bad for health. Second, people are employed, and the nature of employment, as I've been saying, can be good for health or bad for health. And third, there's the wider impact of the workplace. In healthcare, we've been talking about anchor institutions, about the impact of the hospital or the healthcare facility on the wider community. So too the workplace, the impact on environment, on society, on local communities, absolutely vital. And I have to say, for the first time since I've been doing this, when I chaired the WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health, we reported in 2008, and then the English Marmot Review 2010, which led to Coventry becoming a Marmot city. For the first time since I've been doing this, I've had businesses beating a path to my door, saying, how can we partner with you? And I'm delighted. I think the private sector has an important role to play. We've talked about national government. In Coventry, we talk about city government. We talk about the voluntary and community sector. We talk about integrated care systems. What about business? Absolutely vital for the reasons that I said. It makes things, it employs people and has wider impacts. So the fact that we're having this discussion this morning, Coventry is so dear to my heart, because when people ask me, is anyone listening to you? And I said, yeah, look at Coventry, they're listening. They're trying to make it real. I talk about Coventry everywhere I go. They're trying to make it real. So the fact that you're having a discussion this morning about changing the workplace, delivering equality in health through local business is absolutely vital. I look forward to being able to quote what Coventry is doing in this domain, as I do in all the other things you've been doing over the last decade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Chris. Really, really good inputs. And what more examples could we possibly need in terms of that link between health and the economy, and how a healthy, happy workforce is an achieving workforce. So really good. So we're now going to pass on to Ronan, who is West Midlands Police, and along with colleagues, and I think Louise is involved in this session as well. Oh, no, we're not. Sorry. I do apologise. That's really poor chairing on my part. I bet you were panicking then, Ronan. I'm not. I'm going to hand over to Steve Weir, who is Coventry City Council, works with a lot of, will be known to a lot of our businesses. So Steve, over to you for your input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. So yeah, I'm Steve Weir, Head of Economic Development at Coventry City Council. So it's a great privilege to be able to come and talk to so many businesses about what we can do to create work that's good for health. You've heard from the two opening speakers about how important that is. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the practical actions that businesses can take in order to in order to make a difference in that environment. So Chris, perhaps I could have the slides up on the screen, please, that I'm going to use. Thanks. And if we could just move on to the next one, please, Chris. So, as I say, I'm gonna try and bring this to some of the practical actions that we would like businesses in Coventry and Warwickshire to take in order to improve health and well-being. So, you know, I hope you agree with our opening speakers that health and well-being is everybody's business. It's just as important for businesses to be working to improve people's health as it is for the council, the NHS, public health, and those sorts of things. So some of the things I'm going to talk about, some of the actions you could take. So implementing a living wage, a social value approach. I'll talk a little bit about that. And some of the stuff we've heard from the opening speakers hints at the importance of fair working practices. So, for example, you will hear quite a lot about Thrive at Work later on in the agenda, and our website, which I'll tell you a little bit about later, also provides you with links to things like disability confidence. So those are accreditations that show how you're looking after your staff and what you're doing to look after their health. So perhaps if I could have the next slide, Chris. So the other thing I was actually going to say about this particular one was about flexible working practices are also very important here. So I'm very lucky to work for the City Council, which is a very flexible employer. You know, people coming back from going off on maternity leave, for example, people changing their working practices around. We're all shown how flexible our working practices can be through the pandemic as well. And that's another thing that I wanted to mention. So it's worth grounding some of this stuff. And I think we all understand this, but I thought it was worth mentioning it. So health inequalities. So those are the avoidable differences in health outcomes due to the conditions that we live, grow, and importantly for this part of the conversation, the conditions that we work in. Work really makes a difference to health. You know, the example that you've just heard about very tough working conditions, you know, with very low reward, that's a brilliant example of what we don't want from work in our city and our region. So let me just pick a few of these examples to talk through now. There's a lot of information on this slide here, and I don't intend to go through all of it, but let me talk a little bit about social value. So one of the things that you could do as a business would be to implement a social value approach. I think it's very important to say at this stage that the council is, Coventry City Council, is currently working on a new social value policy. So why is that important? So the money that you spend as a business and the people that you employ as a business, there's a big opportunity for you to maximize the benefit of the local community through the employment that you create, through the money that you spend. At the risk of stating the obvious, if you spend £1 in the local economy with a local supplier, that is far better for Coventry and Warwickshire than if you're spending money that we don't feel the benefit of. If you successfully create social value in your business, you'll have a much stronger brand. Many public contracts are now placing a higher weight on social value. So you'll be in a more competitive position as a business to win some of those public contracts if you've got a really strong track record on social value. So again, I just want to mention the council's policy. So we're in the process of developing a new social value policy that will be made public through the political process later in the summer. Now, whilst that is our social value policy that sets out how the council intends to create social value, spend money locally, encourage the community through the money it expends and its actions, the idea of our policy is that it demonstrates best practice that other organisations, other anchor organisations and businesses can use. So I'd encourage everybody to look out for that, for the council's social value policy when it's published over the summer. Other thing I wanted to mention here is I wanted to pick out skills improvement. So training and skills development for lower graded staff particularly is really important. So a more highly skilled workforce, you invest in your workforce, you'll be able to promote from within your business, you'll be able to develop that talent, and you ultimately reduce staff turnover. And there's a statistic here which I think is really useful. So companies who invest in training, almost 40% higher productivity, 20% over 20% increase in income per employee. Now, there are various things that we can do to support in Coventry and Warwickshire with investment in training. So there are programs such as Skills for Growth, which is a European Social Fund program, which still has another couple of years to run, which is run by the team here at Coventry City Council that can help SMEs invest in the training that they need for their workforces. And we are also running a scheme where we transfer unspent apprenticeship levy from the council to SMEs to fund apprenticeships in those businesses. Now, if you're an employer that is having trouble spending all your apprenticeship levy, the other thing that we can do as a council is give you advice about how you can transfer your levy into other smaller businesses, rather than having that money go back to the effectively going back in tax. We want to help you keep that money in the local economy, and we think that's really important. So if you have the next slide, please, Chris. So again, just continuing this journey that I've outlined over the last few minutes. So a real living wage we've talked about. And again, the opening speakers both explain some of this. So if staff have a better income, a fairer income, their health will improve. What do you see as a business? Well, you see your productivity goes up, less sickness absence, less staff turnover, all those sorts of things. You can see here again, as well as the productivity and income improvements talked about earlier. You can see here the cost. Every business, it costs every business £11,000 for each person that leaves, and with staff turnover. So you can see the benefits for you there. I've already talked about the maximising the benefits of your business to the local economy through social value, and the strengthening that can do with your brand and putting you in the position to secure more of those public contracts. And again, we already talked about the importance of skills improvement. So next one, please, Chris. So this is really the key thing that I wanted to say. So this is our ask of you today as businesses. So we've come up with a suggested list of actions there. Of course, there are many more. What we're asking of you is to pick one or two of those actions that we've outlined and that we will outline in the course of today's event, or come up with your own, because there are a lot more ways of improving health inequalities through your business's work. Make a commitment on our call to action website. So be really vocal about what you're doing. Carry out the action. Let everyone know. Let us know. Let your customers know. Let other businesses know. And be really vocal about what you're doing to improve health inequalities through the work of your business. As I hope that we've outlined at the start of this agenda today, there is a lot in it for everybody, including in yourselves as businesses. Next one, please, Chris. So, as I've hopefully been clear during my section of the agenda, this isn't a one-way thing. We want to offer you resources in order to support you to create the health improvements and the social value that I've talked about. So there are various resources and signposting on our website. That's also where you can sign up to the call to action. There is support from sponsor organisations. We're hosted by the Chamber of Commerce today. I'm sure there's plenty that the Chamber can tell you about support that's on offer from various places. Also colleagues at places like the Growth Hub. You'll be able to have a really good conversation with them. Finally, support from the public health and economic development teams at the City Council. So, Chris, at this stage, perhaps if I would be able to invite Dave Hope briefly onto the screen to introduce to everybody, if that's okay. So Dave Hope works with me in the Economic Development Service. Dave is a team leader in our Projects and Economics Policy area. So Dave will be around for the rest of the agenda and for the Q&As and the discussions. So if there are questions you've got about the support from the council for businesses in reducing health inequalities, please direct them to Dave as the agenda develops. Here's Dave.
Have we got Dave with us?
Do you want to introduce yourself very briefly, Dave, and then I will hand back to you, Liz?
Yeah, no worries, Steve. Thanks for that. So I head up the economic policy and major projects arm of the Economic Development Service with Steve, and we've also been working closely with our public health team, and also other support intermediaries, as Steve describes, such as the Chamber and the growth of to try and stimulate action and get as many businesses as we can involved in this important agenda in the coming weeks and months. So I'm clearly happy to deal with questions as best I can from members of the audience as the session progresses.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Steve. A really good practical session there. And just a reminder that we've got things in the chat, but we haven't got anything in the Q&A yet. So please do put things in the Q&A, and if we have time later, we will come back to that. So I just want to make two reflections before we do eventually move on to Ronan. One is the really practical, tangible stuff that Steve's just been talking about in terms of things like training, policy, retention of staff, and Thrive at Work is a key element of that, which we'll hear about later. But just to reflect on something that Sir Michael was saying earlier in terms of that people feeling in control of their day, their daily work, and the importance of that in individuals. And I think for businesses, that can sometimes be quite a difficult challenge in order to giving people that control. But that is the one thing from my perspective that will really help people feel that they have a sense of purpose and being valued, etc., which will have a really positive impact on mental well-being and resilience. So if you take nothing else from what we've talked about so far, then please perhaps reflect on that. So we are now going to move on. So thank you to Ronan and colleagues, and I think Louise is in this session as well. So over to you. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Morning, Ronan.
Louise, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Really pleased to see that we've got a good turnout today. I think I'm still in awe of the fact that we've got Sir Chris Ham and Sir Michael Marmot with us this morning, and also in the background, Martin Rees, the Chief Executive of our city. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Louise Bennett, and I am the Chief Executive of your local Chamber of Commerce. And when I think about a call to action to the private sector around inequalities in health, I immediately think, as I'm sure you do, about skills, opportunities and jobs. And of course, in this room, we all are very fortunate enough to enjoy a job and see that connectivity between our employment, our income and our health and well-being. Although I do hear Sir Michael's very important point around work can be good for health, but it can also be bad for health, which then brings in some of the discussion, some of the conversation that Steve created around, well, what more should we be doing as employers? And again, my mind tends to go to things like we should be offering more than the minimum wage. We should be thinking about a living wage. We should be investing in our staff. We should be thinking about investment in the health and the mental health and well-being of our staff. And very importantly, we should be thinking about equality of opportunity. So how do we as businesses, as employers, tap into that much wider and diverse and rich source of talent that is out there in our communities? So we have a case study here today from one of our very large employers, the West Midlands Police, and we're going to hear from Ronan and possibly his colleague about the kinds of things that you do, Ronan, in terms of tackling inequalities in health. Over to Ronan.
Thank you, Louise. I'm just going to present my screen, but I have got a colleague with me who I'll let introduce herself shortly. But my name is Ronan Tyre, so I'm the Superintendent for Policing in Coventry, and which, to translate that into perhaps normal person speak, I'm responsible for the operational delivery of policing within the city. The colleague who's with me is Lily. I'll let Lily introduce herself while I just set up the PowerPoint.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lily Abbas, and I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator at West Midlands Police, which basically means that I look after diversity and inclusion as part of a team for the whole of the policing force.
Thanks, Lily. If someone could just let me know if they can see the PowerPoint in front, that'll be great.
Hi, Ronan, it's Liz. It's working great. Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Cheers for that, Liz. So West Midlands Police, obviously, like Louise said there, is a major employer within the West Midlands. In Coventry itself, there's circa about 500 members of staff that work within the city, and that's policing your 999 calls, it's policing investigations, as well as a lot of sort of back officey type functions. So we have a large team there that deals with people answering 999 calls, but also dealing with case progression and files, so that we have a seamless process between the start of the process and the end before it gets to a court. But what we've been asked to come and speak to you about today is about us as an employer. So we're going to talk quite a bit about what that means if you are part of West Midlands Police, the challenges that we face in trying to get people to join our organisation, and where we've kind of come from a bit of a personal story about when I started policing over 16 years ago. But I think I'm going to hand over to Lee to start off and talk about something we're really proud of within West Midlands Police, which she'll talk you through now. Lee, over to you.
Thank you, Ronan. So yes, back in 2017, we managed to become the 15th most inclusive company in the top 50 awards, which was absolutely fantastic. But moving forward to last year's, to the 2020 awards, I'm really pleased to say that we became the second most inclusive employer. And this has been really, really fantastic. It certainly boosts being able to carry out our work around diversity and inclusion. But we haven't done this as a result of just processes and policies. It's had to have an impact of changing the culture within policing. And this culture change has enabled us to bring in new policies and procedures that have helped us to move forward. And we are now seen as the gold standard in policing, which is absolutely fantastic. We are now an employer of choice as well, which is absolutely brilliant. We have people joining us purely because of the accolades we've managed to gain, like being the second in the top 50 UK employers. And we were also the first ever metropolitan force to become a disability confident leader. So if we move on to the next screen, Ronan, if that's okay. Thank you very much. So to be able to get to the point that we're at, where we are the second most inclusive company in the West Midlands, we have our new diversity and inclusion strategy. And that's based on 4 key goals or pillars. And these are going to be highlighted over the next 3 years. So as you can see, we've got our inclusive culture, and we're looking to build the architecture and the environment to sustain an inclusive culture. This is really, really important. We need to have those policies and procedures in place so that we can help our colleagues to go on that journey with us. But at the same time, we need inclusive leadership. All of our leaders are actively leading and role modelling inclusive behaviours, and they're given that education to help them to do that. We also need to ensure that we are reflecting the communities we serve with our colleague diversity. We police one of the most diverse areas in the whole of the country. So we need to make sure that actually when the general public look at policing, they can see themselves in those roles. And then, of course, there's our inclusive reputation and service. We need to build trust and relationships with our external communities. And I know Ronan's going to speak about this in a little while, around UK policing and that it's policing by consent. Okay, if I can ask you to go on to the next slide, please, Ronan. Thank you. So with all of our policies and procedures, we need to make sure that we've taken everything into account of how that could have a detrimental effect on our internal and external communities. So we have our equality analysis process, and you will see it on screen. It's quite small, but I can send this out. And basically any new project, any new policy, procedure, anything that we're about to do, we will go through an equality analysis process at the very beginning of that project. And we're looking to make sure that there isn't going to be any detrimental effect on our colleagues or our communities. And this will cover all of the protected characteristics, but also go that bit further as well. So it's asking, you know, sort of how do we engage with people? How is this going to affect them? Are there things that we can put in place to try and stop that detrimental effect, or to help them be able to look at these policies and procedures and think, yes, they are fair? We want to make sure that our policing is fair and that people feel they can belong at West Midlands Police. Okay, I'll hand over to you, Ronan.
Thanks, Lily. So I think, while we talk about, the previous speech about health inequality, I think everyone will acknowledge that actually the way that a community is policed has an impact around the equality that's happening, and particularly the health equality as well that's happening in their area. But when we translate that back into internally, as Lily talked about the strategy and the values that have been placed there, actually when we talk about an inclusive culture for us as an organisation, the language has been really key. So if I talk about kind of when I joined the police force, back in 2006, just to give you an idea of the context at that time, it was only 3 years after Section 28 was repealed for local authorities. And actually, there was a documentary called The Secret Policeman, which talked about or documented, some significant racism and homophobia within the police service at training, just prior to me joining. And that feels so alien to where we've come now, just 16 years later. There is a reality that, 16 years ago, we talked about equality and that was part of our language. But I think we've moved through that. And as you can see on the kind of right-hand side there in that kind of pictogram, if you like, I think we're using a language in order to transition from what we describe as equality into inclusivity, which I think we're effectively saying is justice, and we're trying to get parity. But that hasn't been easy. It's been a significant journey. And, we've talked about what equality is, and I think staff have understood that. I think then we've moved and spent a long time in the kind of diversity years. And I think we've probably spent a decade discussing the differences between individual staff that work there, but also the differences between communities and how it's important that we acknowledge those and that we don't treat people the same. If I'm honest, I think we're probably a little bit stuck there. I think the next stage is us then trying to move into inclusion. And that's really difficult. So we're starting to talk about things like white privilege. We're starting to talk about structural racism. But that's hard because people have to acknowledge the deficiencies in their own approach. People have to acknowledge that actually, whilst they don't believe, for example, that they are racist, that actually structurally and organisationally, there might be elements of the way that we operate as a business, but also as we operate as society, that actually means that people from underrepresented communities find it more difficult to join policing or more difficult to access some of our services. And the images on the thing just talk there about and give an indication of why it's so important for policing. So, we're not a business. We are a one service and everyone has to use us. If something goes wrong, we don't necessarily lose capital, but what we do lose is we lose trust and confidence, which is the revenue of policing. If we lose trust and confidence, we lose the kind of oxygen that we need to continue delivering exceptional policing services for communities. We lose our streams of intelligence. We lose, volunteers. We lose people that want to come and join our organisation, and we don't become diverse, and therefore we can become stuck in a mindset that doesn't allow us to look at policing in the next decade or two about how we're going to transform our service. But we acknowledge that there's things that are really easy to derail us. So, as you see some of the images there, they will invoke some emotions from you, but there is a reality that policing in its entirety doesn't get hours and hours, days to discuss complex, challenging societal issues. Often we have to make decisions in minutes that can have long-standing repercussions for our service, not just West Midlands Police, but also policing both nationally and internationally. And so what are we doing internally? So as well as changing our culture about changing it from equality into inclusivity, actually we acknowledge that actually a major part of that is around our leaders. And actually as a leader in policing, if I look at my background, I came, brought up in Cheshire, that did not reflect the diverse communities that we now see in the West Midlands. So actually there's a really important step that the organisation needs to take, in that we need to inform and enhance the understanding of our staff and our leaders. And the way that we're doing that is by producing the information that Liz is going to talk about here, because it's incumbent on the organisation to enhance the collective learning around our staff. Lily, do you want to talk a bit about what this screenshot is and what that represents?
Thank you. Yes, so we have a learning academy that is available to all of our colleagues. This is really important for that self-learning and self-reflection. So it covers a lot of things, like you'll see on the screen, from diversity and inclusion, but it goes much further than that. So we now have honest conversations and brave spaces as well. And these are places where we will come together with a group of colleagues with a difficult question. So recently we've asked about women's safety and how we can help women to feel more safe when they're out and about, whether in uniform or out of uniform. And it's really good to get people to come and feedback and to talk about this openly. And sometimes they may use the wrong language, or they may not sort of completely understand. And the whole point of the brave space is to be able to say, that's fine, come and give those opinions, come and talk to us about it, and let us help you to learn and to understand. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll talk a bit about the courses that we have available. So we have on our Learning Academy, we have a number of areas. We have sort of things to listen to, things to read, things to feedback on, everything from TED Talks to book clubs. But we also have our Inclusion Bites podcasts, which cover all sorts from understanding unconscious bias to, you can see, trans and non-binary awareness. And these are videos that we subscribe to through Skill Boosters, and we also help to record these videos as well. So we use our own staff and our own colleagues to record the videos that are going to be seen by others. And it's really important because none of us can be an expert in absolutely every single area. And especially when you're a supervisor, generally you will take on that role and you will suddenly have a team that will have a number of different sort of learning experiences, experiences from home life and at work. And we need to be able to understand and empathise with where they're coming from, and to understand that we all have really unique talents that we can bring to the table. And so these have been really, really helpful in helping us to upskill our supervisors and our colleagues in all areas of diversity and inclusion. Some of the really important ones on here that we've been making sort of mandatory are especially around mental health and managing stress, particularly through COVID. So that's about self-resilience. That's been really, really important. Obviously, there's also the impact of micro behaviours, which a lot of people won't particularly have a great understanding of. And that's been really important as to how those micro behaviours and those micro sort of criticisms can have an effect on our colleagues day to day. We've also had external speakers that come in for us. So we have a D&I week each year, and that's been absolutely fantastic. So we've had Mardis Gurari from the Female Factor. We have Surinder Sharma coming around positive action. We have talks on the menopause, absolutely everything that you can think of, right down to work-life balance. And that really helps us to understand that actually we need all of our colleagues to feel that they belong at work. And it's no longer about leaving your home life at the door when you get to work. You can bring your whole self to work.
Thanks, Lily. I think, you know, the importance of what Lily was talking about there around sort of brave spaces at the start of Lily's segment at the start there. I think that's really important, because what West Midlands Police have said is that we aren't going to hide from some of the more challenging issues that are facing society. So, you know, there was, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement happened, you know, last year as a result of, you know, the terrible death of George Floyd. You know, that was an opportunity for us to actually really face that head on, you know, and actually sit down with staff and say, what does this mean to you? You know, what does it look like with our relationship with the Black community? And through, you know, what has been a terrible incident that happened, you know, in a different part of the world, actually, yes, we did see protests within the West Midlands, you know, we did see vigils, but actually we didn't see the scenes that happened within different parts of the UK. And partly, I believe, and I do genuinely believe this, because we'd made steps with both internal, you know, the Black and Asian Policing Association, but also the Black community, that enabled us to say, actually, this is what we're doing internally. As a result of that, you know, we're having these brave spaces, we are having challenging conversations with staff about what that means, and then we're putting an action plan at the back of that as well. So, you know, with that, and some of the actions that we're taking here around really exposing our colleagues to what it means to be inclusive as an organisation. So, you know, they will do things normally that hopefully you would expect. So the way that we recruit and the way that we select for leadership positions, you know, everyone has to have done unconscious bias training. We have representative panels, often including members of the community. And there are a number of D&I targeted events so that we can go into marginalised communities, or what we term as more hard to reach communities, so that we can increase our diversity within our organisation, whether that be visible or non-visible, that ultimately achieves our aspiration of having a more inclusive service. One of the more overt acts that we've done that I think has really helped our organisation become more inclusive is what you're seeing on screen now. So it's termed Humans of WMP, and what we're effectively doing is we're trying to shed the uniform. So we're trying to find the people that sit behind the uniform within West Midlands Police. And you'll see there, if you kind of look around the screen, a number of people that have shared their personal stories, some from coming from different parts of the world, some from having disabled children, some from having, you know, talking about their experiences of coming out, you know, when Section 28 was still in place, and what then their experiences are within the organisation now. And that's really been a bit of a watershed moment. It's been going on since, I think, you know, the early, see there, sort of 2018. And what we've really seen is that at the start, I think it's probably fair to say that the organisation felt that some of that could be quite, you know, quite naff. But actually, people can really embrace it. People can feel that actually they've got colleagues that they can relate to. And this is all available publicly as well for the public to see, so that they can see that actually the officers that come and work within their communities are actually just like them. I'm mindful I'm going over time, so I'll talk at ends about sort of inclusive reputation and service. So there's an acknowledgement that we are heavily scrutinised as policing. You know, that might not be felt by communities, but NHS Inspectorate Constabulary, the Independent Office of Policing Conduct, we have independent advisory groups, stop and search scrutiny panels, as well as actually the pressure that comes from our own staff associations, which are very strong bodies. You know, we're far more accountable now in terms of, you know, the availability of body-worn cameras, etc., when we're dealing with the public. But policing is really, really difficult. We rely on trusted relationships. And I think the bottom left there really just highlights how all of the hard work that we do, whether that be around, you know, women in policing, or whether it be about engaging with you know, Black and Asian colleagues, it only takes one incident to completely, you know, derail that. You know, and I look at the headlines there. I'm not sure that there was the same outcry with regards to what happened with policing as when Harold Shipman, for example, in the medical profession, did something really, really, you know, awful. And you didn't see the same types of vigils or protests around policing. And you probably, you know, didn't see that their title was still in there. You know, or I'd say that's one person. I suppose if I can take the opportunity to say to everybody here now, because we talked about social capital, there is lots of opportunities for your employees to come and experience policing, but not just policing, but actually experience what it is to see how the quality get on the front line. You know, come and work as a special constable, come and work with our IGs, come and work with our street watch, and see what that means to then take back into your organisations to hopefully make you a more valued employer, and be able to deliver effective services or better businesses for the city of Coventry. Thank you, Louise.
Okay, thank you, Ronan. We'll just get back on camera. There we go. Thank you, Ronan. That's an absolutely amazing example of best practice. And I know a lot of what you've just talked about, Ronan, and the wider team will resonate with many of us in business as employers. And the thing that resonated with me most, and it's quite a simple thing really, but it was the reference that you and your colleague made to those honest conversations with staff. And I love that. And so I think there's a lot we can take from what you're doing in our police service and place that in a toolkit. And that is something that the Chamber is talking to the city about. So how do we devise a toolkit? How do we make it simple for businesses to really want to play their part in this sort of call to action? So thank you so much, Ronan. Now it's really important, I'm conscious of time, but it really is important that we take some inputs from some of our businesses in the room, some of our leaders in the room, particularly as I note from the participants, we've got some leaders who represent the smaller to medium-sized businesses from across our city and indeed Warwickshire. And as I always do, my colleagues will know this, I've picked on a few people literally in the last half an hour. And so I'm going to invite Steve Harcourt, if you're still with us, Steve. I'm going to invite Steve Harcourt to introduce himself. And Steve, if you can say, if you can talk to us about whether this has resonated with you and your business. So have we got Steve in the room?
Hi, Louise. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you,
Sorry,
Steve.
it just cut out for a second.
No.
Yeah, so I'm a director at Prime Accountants based in our Coventry office, and we've got offices throughout the West Midlands in Solihull and Birmingham. We have approximately 100 employees over those three sites, and we see our employees, our staff, as our biggest assets, and as a business, we require our staff to obviously work hard, work efficiently. That efficiency and effectiveness then passes on to the clients that we service, and that will ultimately make our business prosper. It will create more jobs going forward, because we'd expand, and we have expanded over the last few years. And part of that process has been our utilisation of the Thrive at Work scheme that I think we started the journey with Jenny at the council probably 3-4 years ago now, and we got accredited. I think it was just as the pandemic started to hit, so it was probably very good timing that we'd got everything in place. As a small medium-sized business, we'd already got a few policies, committees in place, looking at various aspects of well-being and health and fitness and charitable stuff that we do. But the Thrive program that we utilise brought all that together and really added to help us build relationships with our employees, empower our employees as well. I think I mentioned at the West Midlands Police Force there, you really need to have that sort of commitment from your team, and need to be all singing from the same hymn sheet, and empowering those individuals is a really strong way of doing that. Communication, as I say, just picking up early signs of people that need assistance, need additional training, again, technical training or management training. We've improved our sort of systems in picking those up, and we have had a flexible working policy for 5 or more years now, and that was really, really helpful when the pandemic hit, because we'd been doing it for a while beforehand, and we were already in a position where it really didn't affect the business, because we'd taken these things on board quite early on, really.
So can I push you? Can I push you a sec, Steve? Conscious
Yeah.
of time, so very quickly, and I'm going to be a bit contentious here, because I know that you've got a route into small to medium-sized businesses because of the work that you do, as we have as a chamber, and we're signed up to Thrive at Work. But I know you've got that route into businesses, and this is with the contentious bit. I also know that we've got 143,000 vacancies across the West Midlands that need to be filled by people. And when I look at the types of vacancies that are available across our region, I recognise that many of them, and forgive me for saying, but many of them might be within hospitality or within social care, where there's not necessarily a living wage being paid. Do you feel that amongst our SMEs, our small to medium-sized enterprises, do you feel, Steve, that there is a recognition that you do have to pay a living wage, you do have to pay to not only get the best people, but also pay to get to offer equality of opportunity and to get the most diverse people into your business? Do you see that, or do you think we've still got barriers?
I think that over looking at a client base and looking at the local economy, I think there's still barriers, and that's it's sort of cost driven, really, more than anything. I mean, here at Prime, yeah, we always look at looking at market rates and looking at sort of paying people the wage that we need to attract people. It's all to do with supply and demand, isn't it? So if you've got some possibly less skilled jobs, there's a number of people that are looking to go for each vacancy, and the individual business may be able to sort of offer a lower wage because they know the supply is there.
Okay, thank you.
But what ultimately needs to be done, I think, from a lot of small businesses is continued training. So okay, the wage at the start of an employment might not be a living wage, but a minimum wage. But with additional training throughout their time in the business, you'd hope to see progression there and longevity.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm going to come to again, picking on someone who only found out in the last half an hour that I was going to pick on him. I'm going to come to another local leader, David Wilson, runs company Glued Limited. And whilst I'll come to you, David, I think some of what Steve said there is certainly something that we need to mull on. Liz, Steve, we're at the City Council. We need to give some thought to, therefore, how we're selling to our businesses and our employers, how we're making the case that sometimes it's not just about the cost, because it's about the return on investment. So yes, it costs more to pay a living wage in some sectors, but actually the return on that investment in terms of retention of staff, investment in staff, can be far more than that outlay. But anyway, have we got David in the room? David
Yes,
Wilson from
yes,
Glued. Hi, David. So has any of this resonated with you, David? And can you tell us very quickly a little bit about your business?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, my business is a brand and communications agency called Glued, and there's only 3 of us, so I think we'd be classed as a micro business. But the thing that's really resonated with me is, of course, diversity. So I identify as a gay man, and diversity in the workplace is really important. And, you know, Ronan earlier mentioned about language in the workplace, and it's really important not to make assumptions about what people kind of think or assume that people are saying. So, for example, if you think about, I look at the world through the lens of a gay man, if you like, and that is different to the lens of a heterosexual person or a trans person. And we all have these very different ways of looking at things. And in business, to be able to see how that affects different people in your workplace, I think is really important, and not to make any assumptions about how they work. And also the other part that I think is really important is about allowing people space to kind of express their views and respect each other's views. So, you know, as a small business, it's very easy for us to deal with those things and just accept that that's normal. But we sometimes work with larger organizations, and you can see that those things can very much be a challenge. I would just mention West Midlands Police, and as a gay guy, as a former trustee of Coventry Pride, I used to organise that. In the 2018 Pride, I thought the way in which West Midlands Police policed that Pride was wonderful, because they just launched into engaging with the community. And obviously, you know, historically, there's been some, you know, challenges with the LGBT community and the police, but yet West Midlands Police got it the total tone right. And I would just kind of celebrate that, you know, you're doing a great job, and thank you.
Oh, that's really lovely. Thanks, Dave. So I'm going to come very quickly back to you, Ronan. So does that
we might have lost Louise, I think.
I think I'm just going to take the opportunity to just pause and say thank you, because it's not very often that I go to any forum where the police are thanked. I think I'm taken a little bit aback by that. I'll just say, I suppose, on the back of it, yeah, Louise is back. Louise, do you want to finish it? I was padding for you.
Oh, no, and I could hear you, but you couldn't see me. No, Ronan, I was coming back to you to round it off, because I just wondered whether that resonated with you, some of what David spoke about there in terms of the use of our language, you know, how we're perceived as businesses and employers by that more diverse community, our wider communities out there. And a conversation I've been having with your team, Liz, is in terms of going to employers and asking them to sign up, be ambassadorial, that whole call to action, how we need to make sure that our language is translated into business friendly language, so they get it, they understand it, and they want to sign up. But yeah, just some closing comments from you, Ronan.
Cheers, Louise. I mean, just to give you an idea, so within the next 3 years, over a third of our workforce will have less than 3 years in it. So actually, we're going to be a really, really young workforce within West Midlands Police in a very, very short space of time. And actually, one thing I didn't discuss in that presentation was about generations. So actually, the generations and their expectations are vastly different, and we are really seeing that as a disciplined service. You know, whereby, you know, I marched when I did my training. You know, that's so alien to people now. To having, you know, new recruits who join us who perhaps don't see this as a career that is the stereotypical 30 years. They see it as a 5-year career. They want to get skills and abilities. They want to come in, experience what it's like to work in deprived communities, to experience, you know, what their customer service might look like when they've got a really angry, drunk individual who wants to try and beat them up, and then take that experience and go into business elsewhere. So yes, it definitely resonates. I think there are unique challenges for West Midlands Police that are hopefully articulated, but some of them will not be unique. They'll be the same as your businesses as well. If there is anything that we as West Midlands Police can do to assist the economic, well-being of the city, then we will. Then that is it's a key aim of mine. Having been new in post in January and coming out of COVID. But I would really encourage you as employers, as business leaders, to consider whether or not you can afford your staff the time to come and engage with, law enforcement or another public service. Because I do genuinely believe that as new recruits are coming in, experiencing that and going into private industry, actually they don't need to come to us and work and be an employee. They can come as on a volunteer basis, and actually you derive the benefit almost immediately. And I do think, a prime example is, if you work in a hospitality or a customer service environment, and if you've been a police officer for a short period of time, you deal with so much and face such adversity that you naturally become more adept at dealing with the variety of different issues that your customer base might have.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you so much to you and your team. Thank you to the business inputs. That's been fabulous. Back to you, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. And just a couple of reflections for me before I hand over to David for the last session for the first part of the morning. So I think what the case study there from Ronan and Lily really exemplified that link between equality and inequalities, and how for cohorts of our community the inequality is really, really strong. Just come back a little bit on Louise's point in terms of living wage, and just the value for businesses of staff retention, presenteeism, investing in people that then will invest in the company are really, that's the space we need to be in. And I really take your point, Louise, in terms of language. The language I use from a public health perspective isn't the same often as the language businesses use, but we need to look for the win-win in that, most definitely, don't we? So I'm going to hand over to David Ayton-Hill. David's Warwickshire County Council. So David's going to both sum up, but also give us perspective from Warwickshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Really interesting to listen to all the speakers and contributions today. Yeah, I suppose to start with, just to say I'm David Ayton-Hill, Assistant Director of Communities at Warwickshire County Council. And it goes without saying that Warwickshire County Council places health and wellbeing as a really key top priority for the council, both as an organisation in terms of how we work with our employees, but also obviously for our residents and for our businesses, and something that we're very focused on. And it's important to note, of course, that this is a Coventry and Warwickshire initiative. This is something we're very supportive of, and we're working closely on this agenda across the Coventry and Warwickshire economy. The Coventry and Warwickshire economy is so integrated and linked together, but it's really important that we do these initiatives as a collective across that whole patch. I think one of the things that it struck me today, that first phrase really was about health and well-being is everybody's business, and we all have a role to play. And the reason why we're having a session like this and talking to the business community is because the business community is such an important part of this whole agenda. We heard very eloquently about the importance of work in being health, and how you can have good employment and bad employment, and how health and work has a huge determinant on health. And the private sector employs 75% of the people in Coventry and Warwickshire. So that's why we really want to talk to the business community, why we want to do this call for action, to really help work with you as the business community to think through how we can take practical steps to make a real difference. And I also took away from earlier speaking, we know what we need to do. We know what those determinants are on health and how we can improve health within our population. So we know what to do. Now's the time for action. So we really need to think through how we as a collective, public sector, private sector, work together to really start impacting on health inequalities, because as has been shown through the pandemic, really has shone a light on those inequalities and the need to do practical action. So we've heard earlier from Steve and from the businesses and from West Midlands Police around the range of things that you can do to think about how you can improve health inequalities, and some are quite simple. I think if you take some time and think it through, some of that thinking around language and what we're saying and how we're presenting ourselves. Some are more complex, as you've heard, around the real living wage and what that means. And for me, just reflecting on that conversation around the living wage and return to business, how do we break that link between low wage economy and health inequalities that we know has an impact, you know, there is that link between, I think, skills and development and training is how we break that link. You know, if we invest in our staff, if we raise skill levels, we become more, our staff and employees become more productive, and therefore it makes sense then for business to employ and to pay a living wage, because we're getting that return. So we can break the link on low wages, we can improve productivity, we can improve societal outcomes through improved health outcomes by taking those practical steps. So we've seen those range of actions, and Steve highlighted a number of things, and it's on the website, a range of actions that people can take. And as we've heard, there's a range of other things you can do. As a business, you can think of a number of things, I'm sure, that you could do, ranging from that quite simple steps to more complex steps, and taking that journey as we go along. So what we're really doing through this is just asking you all to really have a think about what you could do practically in your business community, in your business, to think what you could do to support health inequalities, to address and tackle health inequalities. Make that call to action, go on that website, list and identify what that action is going to be, and shout to the world about what you're doing. That's great for your business in terms of showcasing what you're doing, your brand. Makes you a better employer, it will attract people to you, but also it will share good practice across the business community by showcasing what you're doing. Other people can learn from that and hopefully do something similar. So really keen that you do go onto that website, you pick your action, follow that call to action, and as Steve said, and I'll reiterate for businesses, of course, Warwickshire as well, there's a whole range of support available to help you in that journey. The county council and the city council, for our economic development teams, have a range of support to help you. Obviously through the chamber and our other business agencies can provide support, and public health teams can provide that support. So there's a huge amount of help out there, huge amount of emphasis on doing this, and we just need to, as I said, I think we must move to the action phase and really start doing something about this. So encourage you all to really pick up this call to action and move forward. On that, I'll hand back to you, Liz.
Thank you, David, and really good sum up, and a really good, literally, call to action there. So that's it for the first part of the morning. I'm really grateful to all of our speakers. We've had some fantastic inputs, and we've kept to time as well. So I'm going to hand back over to Chris Nagel, just in terms of, we've got a break now, and then do people stay dialed on or dial back on? How does it work?
Yeah, if everybody wants to just stay on, there'll just be a holding slide, and I think we're reconvening at 5 to 11 or 11.
Brilliant. So just enough time for comfort break and to make a coffee. And thanks again for everybody's input this morning. Thank you.
Chris, are you there?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Did you get the message from Hannah about my case study speakers? I think they've logged in as me, and I could see one of them, and it's not me. Obviously, I'm up next. And obviously they need to come on after me. Can you just check your emails? There's something from Hannah about that.
Yeah.
Because I noticed it was quite strange, because there was a comment in the chat and it said Jenny Duggan.
Yeah, that was me, Jenny.
I know. So we need to. Oh, you're there, Jude. Is that Julie and Tracy? You're both there.
Sorry.
Oh, right, that's okay. No, that's fine.
Jenny, I'm here, but I can't see myself on camera. I've put my camera on, but I can't see myself. But I'm not bothered about that. And you've got three Jennies.
Oh, right.
So can I just check the lady with the dark hair with the cat?
Yes. Oh, you can see.
Yeah, I can see you. What's your name? And I'll just rename.
Tracy Griffiths. I can't see myself though, so that's a bit disconcerting. Ah, yeah, I can see me now. I can see you, Jenny, as well now.
Thank you.
Fab.
And then the other Jenny with the blonde hair.
Julie Seaborn.
Okay.
So Jenny, you're all over social media, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
I was confused because I know you commented before, and I was like, is that reply to me or no? Is that Jenny? I was just like, oh dear.
Okay, so you should all have the correct names now for when we get this.
Thank you ever so much. Oh, that's clever. Well
Yeah,
done.
thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Found that in so brilliant. Well done.
Hello, Chris speaking. Ready to start when you are, Jenny.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Okay, as you can see, my name is Jenny Duggan. I work for Coventry City Council. However, Thrive at Work is actually available to businesses across the whole of Coventry and Warwickshire. Whilst Thrive at Work itself is a West Midlands combined authority initiative, both Coventry City Council and Warwickshire County Council have actually gone a step further. They've recognised that this is really important to get through to businesses in the workplace, and those messages then feed on to the wider community. So actually businesses in Coventry and Warwickshire are very fortunate because we're able to offer one-to-one support. If you're outside of Coventry and Warwickshire, literally you get access to a portal. There is support on that portal, but it's just all done virtually. You don't actually have anybody like myself or my team members who will work literally on a one-on-one to help businesses to get to achieving Thrive. Very nice to hear earlier Steve Harcourt from Prime Accountants. Obviously, he's given you a little bit of a flavour as to what you can expect from Thrive and what sort of things you can get out of it, but every business is different. If I can have my slide deck now, Chris, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so the Thrive at Work, it's a Thrive at Work Wellbeing Award, and what it does is it recognises businesses around what they're doing in the workplace around health and wellbeing of their employees. Can you move to the next slide, please? This is a better one because it explains a bit more about what it's about. So it's a commitment that a business makes, and it's completely free. So you would register on the website and you get access to an online dashboard or portal, whatever you want to call it. And there are things that you need to do and to evidence what you're doing around employee health and well-being. And as one of the schools actually that I've worked with, they did say to me, we don't know what we don't know. So this is a fantastic framework. It's a structured approach that takes you through all sorts of elements around health and well-being, completely holistic framework, and it helps you to make it easier to both raise awareness within your employees and to take action, which is what we're talking about today around health inequalities, but this is across the whole of the workplace. There is also, as I alluded to there is a toolkit available, which once you've registered on the portal, you then have access to a toolkit. For each section in Thrive, there is a corresponding toolkit. So if you don't happen to have whatever it is that's asking you, there are resources there to help you achieve that. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the importance of Thrive, a lot of it is, well, you probably heard it all this morning, but really employers are realising that they need to do something. And I think particularly with the situation we've been in the last 12 months with COVID, it's really brought this to the fore that employers need to look at what they can do to look after their workforce's health and well-being. And those sort of things lead on to, if you're doing things around that. Somebody mentioned earlier about, it was actually West Midlands Police, about being an employer of choice. If you're doing these things and you're supporting your employees, then you will have a much happier workforce. People who are happier in the workplace are more productive. And obviously, if they're happier and they're healthier, everything's all linked together. So if we can have the next slide, please. Okay, so it's a nice little quote there. The cost of presenteeism. This slide actually was pre-COVID, so I'm going to suggest here that this would actually be much higher, because with people working from home, you may get people who do not ring in sick. I mean, I've noticed in a lot of the employees that I've worked with that their sickness absence has actually gone down in the last 12 months, and that's because people are not actually, they're carrying on working even if perhaps they're not feeling great, but they're at home, so they haven't got to travel into the workplace. So I'll have to get this slide updated hopefully when we get some more figures. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so again, this is obviously just giving you, I'm not going to read all these out to you. It's quite a busy slide, but it gives you an idea of, the evidence that employers can see a financial benefit for investing in employee health and well-being. Now, one of those wins there would be a reduced sickness absence. I can cite a business that we know of that's worked towards Thrive and have actually got their bronze award. And what they did, one of the things that we do with Thrive is we start off by asking employers to do a survey of their staff, and it's all around health and well-being. And from that survey, They can then see how their staff are feeling and what things are important to their staff. And as I said, every workplace is different, and we work with workplaces really that employ anything from 10 up to thousands. So most of the local councils are signed up to Thrive. Some of them have already got Thrive, some of them are about to go for their accreditation. But what we found with this organisation, when they did their survey and they also did an analysis of their sickness absence stats, they found that most of the issues were around mental health. It was actually a school, I won't name them, but it was a school that they identified this. So what they then did, they worked with us, and we actually put together a plan of initiatives that they could start to introduce into their business that would help them to reduce their cost of employing interim teachers when people were off sick, and obviously look at their other staff sickness absence. And they were all about mental health. So there were things like training mental health first aiders, introducing mindfulness sessions, and they also introduced flexible working for some of their non-teaching staff. And when they got to the end and they completed their Thrive and they looked at their journey of where they started and where they got to, they actually saved themselves £20,000 on their sickness absence, which is a phenomenal amount of money. Okay, can you move to the next slide, please? So within Thrive itself, once you've registered and you've got access to the portal, you'll find that there are, within the bronze level, I'll be honest, there are only 4 commitment themes. The external risk, the purple slide on there, that doesn't come in until silver level. Because what you do with Thrive is you start at bronze and then you hopefully move on to silver and gold. However, some smaller businesses might just want to remain at bronze because they're the basic things that you need. But we would expect larger businesses to move to silver and gold. So of the 4 commitment themes, the sorts of things that we're looking for you to demonstrate in your workplace, the first one, enablers of health, is really looking at how you manage your organisation. So all of the legal aspects, the absence management, the health and safety, and obviously management buy-in. If you haven't got senior management buy-in and they don't believe in health and wellbeing in the workplace, it's never going to work. So these are critical things that we need to have in place. The second 2, the red one and the blue one, the mental health and MSK, they are both the main reasons why people will take, in the workplace, why people take long-term sickness absence. So they're split out to try and address those things. And then the lifestyles, which is the green, they're the things that impact onto the 2, sort of the mental health and musculoskeletal. So things like smoking, alcohol, substance abuse, again, healthy eating, physical activity, those kinds of things all have an impact into here. So what we look for when we're working on Thrive is we would look to get you to evidence what you're doing around these commitment themes. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, it's a short one. So the next thing we ask you to do after the surveys, we ask you to do an organisational self-assessment. And if you can click to the next slide, it actually gives you a bit better. Right, okay. So what you would do is you would actually look at where you're at as of today, where you're at with all of these things to do with Thrive in the bronze level, which is where you start. So for example, the first one does say undertake a health and wellbeing needs assessment, which is your survey, to address that. So if you've done it, you would be fully met. If you haven't done it, you'd be not met. If you're doing it currently, you'd be part met. So this gives you an idea. It's a bit of a gap analysis, really. It gives you an idea of where you're starting from. Now, obviously, if you've got fully met on a lot of things, then it would just be a case of uploading that evidence to the portal to support that. If you haven't, if you've got part met and not met, that's where myself and my team will work with you to get you to the situation where you are fully met, so that you've then completed the whole of the bronze level. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then within the tool, the actual portal itself, you will get an explanation of each section along with the toolkit. So this gives you just at bronze level, at the board level 1. This is talking about the survey. It's very small writing, so you might not be able to read that, but it explains why you need to do a survey. And we can actually give you an online survey for free. I mean, all of this is free. The only thing it costs you is your time to work with us. So the survey we've already got, we can send you that, you have your own unique link, you send it to your staff, and then we can obviously look at the results to then obviously take you forward and create your action plan. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So as I've mentioned, there is a free toolkit. We do an awards event. Usually it's in person, but last year it was obviously a webinar due to COVID. But obviously, if you want to sign up for Thrive, it doesn't commit you if you sign up and then you decide afterwards it's not for you, because you can still use the framework, because we still want to be able to get into businesses and to be able to make a difference. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand over now. I don't know if I'm handing back to somebody and then handing over to my my case study. Thank you. If I can introduce Tracy and Julie from Coventry and Rugby and Warwickshire North CCG. That's a mouthful, isn't it, ladies?
Hello. Oh, Tracy, you're on mute.
Apologies. So I'm Tracy Griffiths, Commissioning Support Officer at Coventry and Warwickshire CCG, which was formerly Coventry and Rugby and Warwickshire North CCGs. I'm here today with my colleague Julie Seaborn to talk about our Thrive at Work Bronze Award journey, which we completed at the end of last year. It took just over a year to be ready for assessment, but because of COVID, we had to put that on hold for about 6 months. So next slide. And the next slide, please. So from our experience, we'd suggest the following important elements in achieving the Thrive Award. Ensure your senior management team are on board from the start. Messages from a very top down will have more of an impact. Create a brand around your wellbeing programme. One of the first things we did was to create a team of wellbeing warriors made up of staff from different teams across the organisation who want to make a difference. Including HR and comms is really important. The Wellbeing Warriors are now recognisable brands throughout the CCG and possibly beyond. Make sure you include staff in the wellbeing programme, as it is for all staff after all. Before starting, survey staff for what they want and then create a programme around the feedback. We also involve staff by asking them to contribute to our Wellbeing Matters newsletter, and their personal stories are really well received and inspiring. Ensure wellbeing is an agenda item on all team meetings to keep a focus on it. Our Wellbeing Warriors take it to their team meetings, and we have standing slots at our staff forum. When completing the criteria, it can seem overwhelming, so start by ticking off what you already have in place, and you will have things in place, and then move on to the things you can set up the easiest before tackling anything more chunky. It doesn't have to be done in order, and we set up our own tracker to record our progress. If you're working without a budget, as we were, try contacting partner organisations to see if they're able to offer any resource. IAPT held sleep and relaxation workshops for us. Groundwork provided an interactive healthy cooking demo, and our community police gave a personal safety session. And finally, Jenny Duggan was an absolute lifeline when we needed a bit more advice and guidance around any criteria, and she helped push us over the line last year, so use her knowledge. Next slide. Some of the challenges we faced included finding the time to actually do the work and staff feeling they were allowed to have the time off to attend any events. This links back to needing management buy-in and letting staff know from the top down that it is acceptable to have this time off. Also linked to the above, an understanding that staff wellbeing is important work for the organisation. Coursework needs to be prioritised, but wellbeing should be part of that equation and not just brushed off, otherwise nothing will be achieved. Getting staff to sign up for events when they've asked, even when they've asked for them, can be tricky. An often cited reason for not attending is clashes with other meetings and having too much else to do. Interestingly, however, when we moved our events online due to COVID, we had more participation. Think about where your staff are based and what roles they have. Are they at their desk 9 to 5, or are they out and about? Are they home working or office based? To ensure access for all, we have wellbeing boards in each of our 4 bases and now record all of our team sessions and upload to a wellbeing channel on Teams, which is a one-stop resource for all wellbeing material. And lastly, COVID-19 and how we've all had to swiftly adapt to new ways of working. This has actually made staff wellbeing more important than ever, and in particular mental health, due to the majority of our staff currently working from home. We address this by holding a series of 6 mental health workshops online and a drop-in session with a clinical psychologist. Next slide, please.
Here are some of the things that we've implemented, including our accountable officer, who was Andrea Green at the time, signing the Time to Change pledge in front of staff and creating a wellbeing commitment to staff. Also signed by Sue Davis, who was our executive wellbeing lead at the time. Next slide, please. And here are some of the events we put on for staff. The healthy cookie demo and quiz went down particularly well, and our staff have really appreciated the meditation sessions, which have been a welcome respite in a busy day. We've also been able to offer free training on mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and bullying and harassment awareness. Next slide, please. So what has the impact of all this been on our staff? Well, after the first 12 months, we sent out an evaluation survey. And as a direct consequence of our wellbeing work, you'll be able to see there that on the slide that 64% of our staff who responded now feel more empowered to talk about their mental health. 20% of us sleep better. 33% of us are more physically active. 37% have improved mental well-being, and 44% eat healthier. Next slide, please. We also asked for feedback after each wellbeing session, and here are the results of a mental health workshop we held last year. As you can see, 100% of staff who responded would recommend the session. 100% of us will use what they've learned in our daily lives, and 100% would like another similar session. So it's fair to say that we're giving staff what they need. Next slide, please. And here are some quotes from staff about our wellbeing work. As you can see, they've been very positive and show that our staff have appreciated the wellbeing programme, and some have even extended the healthy living choices towards their families at home. Next slide, please. So after 18 months of hard work, we finally achieved the Thrive at Work Bronze Award, and we were very proud to have done so. An award ceremony was held in September last year, hosted by the Mayor of Birmingham, Andy Street. We were chosen to showcase our journey in a short video clip that was shown at the event. For our Accreditation Assessment report, our staff were interviewed, and the report confirmed that our CCGs had taken positive action on the health and well-being of our employees, and the majority of them would recommend others to work for our CCG. Therefore, we feel that we've effected change within the organisation, and we look forward to further embedding staff well-being in our culture. Next slide, please. This is our contacts in case anybody would like to get in touch and find out more. Thank you.
Ah, you've got me back again. That's great. Thank you very, very much, both Julie and Tracy. It's been fantastic working with you. You really did take things on board, and you've done so much. You know, not all of our businesses are able to do that, but you know, even if you make a small difference and a small change, that can have a massive impact. But you've obviously done a lot, and I love the fact that you call your health champions wellbeing warriors. I think that's brilliant. So I'm looking forward to working with you both towards silver. I know you've started to put some evidence on for silver, so hopefully you'll be receiving your next awards very shortly. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Hopefully for everybody else, this case study will have motivated you to want to work towards the Thrive at Work Award yourself, and to achieve this for your business, and obviously receive the support from us. Remember, as I said earlier, there is no cost to working towards the award, and obviously full support is available within Coventry and Warwickshire, because as I mentioned earlier, Coventry City Council and Warwickshire County Council are very supportive, and they recognise the importance of wellbeing in the workplace, and the fact that we can support people to achieve their Thrive at Work award. So to find out more and register, I think there's probably the last slide, if you can put that back on, Chris, or if that's not possible, we can put it on at the end, where you've got my contact information. Alternatively, you can go onto the Thrive at Work website, which is, it's obviously a West Midlands Combined Authority, it's part of that. I can read it out, but I'm sure that, are you going to send the slides, Chris, at the end for people?
Yes, we'll do.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. There is information on there of how to contact me, email, phone, and obviously the website if you want to register and have a look a bit more around what Thrive can do for you. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope it inspires you to go and do the same in your own workplace. Thanks.
Morning, everybody. Hopefully you've had time for a quick break and you'll be really appreciative of the 15 or 20 minutes that we're going to give you back because we're running slightly early. So my name's Jo Southern. I work for Warwickshire County Council in the public health team. Hope you've enjoyed the session so far. I'm going to spend around about 10 minutes now talking to you about the Wellbeing for Life programme and some of the wellbeing support that you can access as a resident, an employer or an employee across Coventry and Warwickshire. I'm just going to turn my video camera off because my internet is playing up, so I don't want to go off halfway through, but I'll come back on screen at the end. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So Wellbeing for Life, it was born out of the success of a 2019 campaign that you may be aware of or even have been involved in yourself called Year of Wellbeing. The aim of the campaign was to raise the profile of local prevention opportunities while encouraging people to be proactive about their own health and wellbeing. And there was 4 key themes, which were encouraging physical activity in children, promoting the benefits of workforce wellbeing, raising awareness of loneliness and social isolation, and celebrating personal success stories. The campaign achieved great success over the year, and they had over 900,000 separate exposures and actively engaged with hundreds of schools across both Coventry and Warwickshire, as well as workplaces, the hospitals, and many residents at a lot of events that they attended. I think there was over 200 events that they attended during the year. So when the year ended, Year of Wellbeing evolved into Wellbeing for Life with a very clear intention to continue the projects and activities that they'd started. However, come as no surprise to you that during the start of 2020, we were hit by this little virus called COVID-19. So unfortunately, it put a stop to a lot of the planned activities. And as we moved into that virtual world of no or limiting social contacts, we were obviously unable to carry out a lot of the activities that had taken place during the year before. However, if we go to the next slide, the focus of Wellbeing for Life remains, and the vision is to continue raising the profile of local prevention opportunities and still encouraging people to be proactive about managing their own healthy lifestyles. So as we move further into the year and towards restrictions lifting, hopefully Wellbeing for Life will start to pick up and we'll get to see some face-to-face opportunities arise again. So a key aim for the programme is to work towards reducing the gap in health inequalities and provide better access to information, support, self-help in the areas that needs it most. And you can see from the slide that for the remainder of 2021 and 22, the programme's looking into promoting and supporting engagement with the Thrive at Work programme that you've just heard all about from Jenny. Maintaining and setting up a website, which you can see on the bottom of that slide. It's wellbeingforlife.co.uk. So this is something that the public health team has set up and we're maintaining, and it's going to have a ton of information for you to access. So it's signposting information, that's both national information and local for Coventry and Warwickshire. Resources that you can download and use in your own wellbeing programmes, and information about community events, as well as celebrating those local personal success stories that were so popular during 2019. So the programme is also striving to support the childhood obesity strategies across Coventry and Warwickshire, and particularly the healthy weight programmes in our primary schools. We're also going to be promoting the 5 ways to wellbeing through campaigns and resources, roadshows and education sessions. The 5 ways to wellbeing, if you're not aware of them, they're 5 easy steps that have been clinically proven for you to take to promote better mental health. So these are connecting with other people, being active, taking notice of your surroundings, keeping on learning and giving to others. And finally, Wellbeing for Life will support a new Wellbeing at Work forum for all employers across Coventry and Warwickshire. So from micro businesses right up to our very large businesses, to come together and share best practice when it comes to workplace wellbeing. Learn about all the resources that are available for you and your employees, and engage with guest speakers that will be talking about their own experiences of raising the profile of wellbeing at work. With the changing working environments that we've had over the past year, the forum will be a place where we can provide you with a great opportunity to see and hear how other businesses have been working in COVID secure environments and how they've been able to deal with a mix of employees hybrid working. So that all important working from home, coming to the office, and what that means with regards to our wellbeing. So if we go to the next slide, please. So what's in it for you really as an employer? What are the benefits of engaging with public health and the Wellbeing for Life programme? So you've already heard some of the benefits from the Thrive team and from Chris earlier this morning. However, promoting wellbeing can help prevent stress, can create positive working environments where individuals and organisations can thrive. And in fact, the 2020 Health and Wellbeing at Work survey from the CIPD identified the top 3 benefits of employers increasing their focus on employee wellbeing, which were better employee morale and engagement, a healthier and more inclusive culture, and lower sickness absence. So the benefit to using the Wellbeing for Life resources that will be available on the website is that you know they're coming from a reputable source. You know that it's going to be accurate information, and quite often they're free or have been fully funded through Warwickshire County Council or Coventry City Council. Having worked in the private sector previously, I fully understand how mind-blowing it can be to try and pull together wellbeing events, promotions and resources that are relevant to your workforce. So I'm hoping that by accessing the information that's on the Wellbeing for Life website and also coming along to the Wellbeing Forum for workplaces, you'll be able to find out what's going on with other people within your industry and support that best practice and improve your own workforce wellbeing. So we go to the final slide. This is really just to give you some of the examples of the resources that you have available to you. I won't run through them all. You'll be able to access all of them through the Wellbeing for Life website or the other websites that I've put on there, which is the Warwickshire County Council and Coventry City Council. They're all available on there. So these resources are for both physical and mental health, and they're accessible for people who are living and working in Coventry and Warwickshire. They range from creative arts programmes to online mental health support. Some of them, Couth, for example, is for our younger population up to the age of 24. Together All is something that you can access if you're living in Coventry or Warwickshire. You can promote these for your employees. They can sign up to the programme and it's fully funded by both councils for you to access. The Dear Life is local support for suicide prevention, and there's loads of resources on there that are completely relevant to just Coventry and Warwickshire. So for more information on how you can access these, please do visit the websites that are on the screen or contact me. My email address was on the original slide that you'll get when you get the slide deck through. Especially if you want any resources for the Wellbeing for Life programme or you want to take part in the Wellbeing at Work Forum, which is going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. We've got a fantastic guest speaker that's coming along to talk about resilience, team spirit and mindset. So really exciting times for workforce wellbeing. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand you over to the final session with Emma Peabody, who's going to talk us through some gentle exercises. Emma's from Everyone Health, and she's going to end the session for us and hopefully get us set up for the rest of the day.
Thanks, Jo. Yes, if you've got the space, you do not need to have your cameras on. We run a lot of sessions with them off. That's fine as well. I'm actually going to give you a little taster of some Tai Chi. It seems and sounds a lot easier on the ears and on the eyes as well. So don't be scared when Jo's just said we're going to run you through some gentle exercises. This is gentle and we're just going to go through some Tai Chi. If you've done it before, great. If you haven't and you just want to watch, that's fine too. Just give it a whirl if you can. If you've got some space in your wherever you are at the moment, I'm just going to adjust this camera so you can see the mats that I'm going to be working on. Okay, I'm just going to pop some music on as well for this. Never know until I'm on it until you can see where we're at. Okay. So we're going to start in a wide boot chi. If you've been sat down for a little while, it might be quite nice for you to stand up and just shake things off a little bit as well in terms of your shoulders, your neck, etc. Let me just play this music and we will begin. So wide root chi to start is wide with the legs. You're going to send the knees towards the toes. You're going to tuck the tailbone underneath, lengthen your spine, palms face knee and relax. Take a nice deep breath in and exhale here. I want you to think of one thought whilst you're doing these exercises or watching and make it a happy thought as well. Breathe in, lift your elbows up. Exhale, palms down. Good. Again, breathe in and exhale. So nice and gentle. Stop being so hard on ourselves. One more. Good. Now take your hands behind, link your fingers, Lift your chest to the ceiling and your knuckles to the floor. Big stretch here. Reach up high and float the arms back down. Good. Hands behind. Again, send the knuckles to the floor. Lift the chest. Breathe in, reach up. Good. And float back down. Now your palms face me. Send one elbow back and the other hand forwards. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Stay low in the legs. Staying in your wide routine. And remember, like I said, don't be hard on yourself. Take it across to the side. Draw back your arm to your heart, to your hand, and sweep the other side. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Good. Side to side. Good. Come into the middle. Breathe in the energy towards your face and then slide your hands forwards. Good. Again. Breathe in and exhale. Breathe in. Even if you're just taking this for a stretch. And exhale. One more. Good. Let's come across again to the side. Bow and arrow. Bring it back. Shift the weight in the leg. From side to side. Swing the arms round. Lengthen in the spine. And then focus on the breath. Nice work. Good. One arm comes up and over onto the top of the head. Extend the opposite arm. Lift up in the legs slightly and change sides. If you feel comfortable with this, turn your head to your extended hand. Good. We're going to breathe in the energy again. So we're going to bring it up towards the face. And exhale, hands forwards. Nice. Breathe in. And exhale. Again, breathe in. And exhale. Breathe in. Stay here. As we began, arms up. Push palms to earth. Good. Stay long in the spine. And move with your breath. Good. Breathe in. And exhale. You should start to be feeling a little bit on the legs now if you are joining in. Good. Take it across to the side. Last time. Bow and arrow. Draw back in the leg to the other side. Extend the arms. Reach. Bring it back. Other side. Only a few more. So if you are out your comfort zone, it's only a few more left. Stay with it. Good. Big arm comes up and over now. Really lengthen, like someone's pulling the end of your fingers and reaching in the arms, releasing the tension in the shoulders and the neck. Good. And you move with your breath. Good. Then we're going to sweep in the energy. Bring it in. Good. Push the palms forwards. Breathe in. Push the palms forwards. Good. One more. Good. Now slowly you're going to start to walk the feet in. And bring it in and relax down. Perfect, perfect, perfect. If you did or you didn't join in, there's a little bit of Tai Chi there for you. Thank you, Joe, for allowing me to come on and show you all as well. And I hope you've had a good day.
Thank you for that, Emma. I just want to thank everybody now for their attendance today. The event has been recorded, just to remind you, and it'll be available on the Chamber of Commerce site. All of the information from today you can also find on the Call to Action website, on the Thrive at Work website that Jenny mentioned earlier, and also the Wellbeing for Life website. Hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.